Okay, so Rosie's gonna get her newly rebuilt brake booster in. This is the brake booster for a 71 Campmobile transporter, I'm sure. If you've got a early bay, you may not have one. Mine's a 71, I think it was the first year they put them in. You got a late bay, you probably got one, but it might look different than this one. And the way it'll go is the master cylinder attaches to here. Make sure to get this inside it. Make sure you've got this little cap on the end of it. The air hose vacuum goes there. Another one goes there. Your pedal assembly will screw into this, and 4 bolts to the frame. And the way your brake booster works is it's a vacuum system. It's got a diaphragm. This hose here comes from up there and goes into the carburetor and gets air. The way I knew it was not working is my engine was revving when I pressed the brakes, so air was getting through the diaphragm and gassing up the motor. So I also had hard brakes, but first thing to do before changing your brake booster is to check your master cylinder and all your vacuum hoses. Another one does come up through here and comes up to the body. Not exactly sure how that works, but you want to check all your hoses and make sure they're not leaking. Then I crawled under the vehicle and had somebody to press the brakes, and I could hear the vacuum leak through the through the brake booster. And I knew then that that's what it was. Had it rebuilt. Right now I'm borrowing somebody else's, so you'll see me uninstall the one that's in it and install this one. Okay. As far as tools involved, I usually keep my tools up under the seat here in the bus. I guess you might have one of these if you have a Lake Beetle. You're going to need a 13mm socket, which I've already got. I've got a flashlight on my phone I'm going to use. You probably need a crescent wrench and a flathead screwdriver. Flathead will be for your hoses, the clamps that are attached. Crescent wrench will be if you need to knock loose the nut there, and then your 13mm should work for everything else. The other thing is that I've already gone ahead and removed the pan that goes up under there. It protects the, and of course I put down something to protect myself, but all the components here have the pan that covers it up, keep road debris out of there. You'll need to access that to get to the parts. Also, you want to have your hair pulled back if you've got long hair like me, as for the Idiot's Guide. I do also keep my Idiot's Guide and Bentley's here. Those are a great help for anything like this. Okay, now that we're under the car, this is, let's see, okay, right here is where your brake pedal comes down, joins into this. Probably not easy to see that close, but there's a cotter pin here. You'll pull out the pin, and then you'll have this free. You'll have to unscrew it from this bolt here, which my nut is already loose, so I'll have no problem. But you might need to break it loose with a breaker bar. There's your 4 bolts that you've got to get loose from the booster. And then, like I said, there's a vacuum hose up top and one around the back, and then the master cylinder is attached. I personally don't remove all the components from the master cylinder. I just attach it and push it back. As you will probably see, it's not very easy to maneuver around all the components, especially having tie rods and whatnot in there, but it makes it simpler than not having to bleed brakes, get fluid everywhere, such and such. Okay, with the cotter pin, pull the pin out. Well, I don't know, is this the cotter? Let's get that free. You set them down. You want to probably put this back in there and make sure you don't lose it. Sorry. And then this will kind of just roll out for free play. And then once you've got it free, you just start unscrewing it. Like I said, I've already put in this borrowed booster, so all the corrosion and fun stuff has already been removed. All the hard rust and whatnot's been beaten down, so might want to use WD-40 if you need. Just try to unscrew it to the point where this comes off. When I got the borrowed one, it had one already attached. Took me a while to break it free. If you remove your master cylinder, if you need to, because a lot of times what happens is your master cylinder starts leaking, and then it will get into your brake booster. There's a rubber diaphragm in there, and that's usually what blows your diaphragm. So a lot of times when people are doing this, they end up replacing that anyways, so it's very sensible if you go ahead and remove that while you're there. But since I'm not removing my master cylinder, I'm not too concerned. Let's see if you can make that out. That's a screw to hold down the clamp on my hose. I'm going to remove that one, and if I can get back here easy enough. Okay, got the two there. There's one more clamp to another vacuum hose there. I stick with the threaded German hoses. They're the best long lasting. It goes into a metal one here that goes to the back, and where I showed you the one that goes into the motor. If you have problems with master cylinders, I'm just going to assume you're probably replacing it, so you probably want to make sure all your lines and everything are secure, solid, such and such. For removing this, I'm going to be, sorry, scoot back a little bit more for you. I'm going to remove the electrical plugs from it. It's probably not a bad idea to disconnect your battery just in case something fouls. I have done rewiring myself, so some of those may not look exactly the same as yours, but from this video I assume you probably can't tell. And so once we remove all of these, you're ready to start playing with your stuff. I don't really think you can switch these up very easily without knowing that you did. Obviously they kind of hold their position there. So I just lay them to the side. I'm going to undo these, and then I'm going to pull this back, and just really careful not to break my lines, because you see one's kind of short right here. And if I bust those, of course I'm going to know I'm going to have fluid everywhere. So once I slide them out of the way, there's your reserve on top, hose that goes up into the top. But master cylinder works a whole other deal, I guess, at this point. But once I remove these two bolts, and I remove the four on the front, I'm going to just slide this back, and I'll show you that. As you can tell, I am using rubber gloves, just as a simple maneuver to hopefully keep rust and nasty out of any cuts I might acquire. And it also keeps for easier cleanup of yourself. But if you haven't had a tetanus shot, it doesn't hurt to have a little extra protection. Some of the spots here are tight to squeeze, so just gotta work with what you got. And here I am. Remove that vacuum hose there, and remove the front bolts to the frame. And just for fun, you can tell where my heater pipes are, nice and open, and probably let plenty of cold air in. I'm getting off the last nut, and it does have corresponding washers, if you can see it. Yeah. So I'm setting them down. I'm going to try and keep the washers with each one. Here comes the fun part. You can tell my borrowed booster had some fluid in it. Lead me to believe that their master cylinder wasn't so swell. I'm going to try and keep your hoses from getting bent or anything. Like I said, this is a little bit tricky to try and move the master cylinder backwards without doing much harm. Also the fact that the booster kind of wants to stay attached to it while you do it. When we pulled this one off of the vehicle it was on, we used a crowbar to pry it back, and that worked out pretty good because we weren't too concerned about its cylinder. Well, once you get it wiggled off, let's see that there's the piston in there. If I can turn on my cell phone light, you can probably see a little better. Give me a sec. Okay. Yeah, that piston goes right into there. So basically, with your brake booster busted, you still get the mechanical brakes, but the diaphragm doesn't give the vacuum action. So that's why I was borrowing this one. Luckily it worked out. It's actually good, but it may not last much longer with all that fluid in there, because that rubber will bust. So we'll pull that off and free it. You see that cap is on there. And once we free that, all you have to do is pull the booster out. Careful not to rip that rubber on there, the boot. And for me, this is the really fun part, trying to wiggle this out without having the booster or the master cylinder out of the way. And like I said, this tie rod will kind of get it, but you know, that's the fun for me. Presumably you'd be removing your master cylinder, it won't be as difficult. But the end up there does depress a little bit, gives you a little bit of room to work with it. Nothing else. Turn your wheel a little bit one way or the other. Have a second party help you with that. Once you pop it out, put it back in the reverse. Okay, very carefully pushed my master cylinder over as far as I could to where I could get it, the booster, over that tie rod, out of that hole, and it just comes straight down and wiggles upside down. Bam, old one out, new one to come in. Then it slides over. Oh, gets hung on a bolt. Try not to get you on the bolt. But you know, slide it back in, screw it back on. Okay, when putting it back on, you want to make sure that your hose is, you know, you're going to rotate this whole thing. You know, it's got 4 bolts. You want to rotate it to where you've got the 2 bolts side to side where the master cylinder will go back on it. And you want to make sure you've got this in the right side, not this side. And then, generally speaking, since the metal cables on this are pretty rough, it's going to be a little difficult to get this slide back on there. So what I usually do is put the bolts onto this first, slide it backwards, and then I'll attach these and then push the whole thing forward to get on the other 4 bolts. And then I think you've got it from there. Just want to say a couple things on doing this. For one, you want to make sure you tighten all your bolts. You want to make sure you put on both your air vacuum hoses. You want to make sure you reconnect those electrical ports on the master cylinder. That's what gives you brake lights and a couple other things, backup lights, tail light. You want to make sure that you don't forget your cotter pin once you install this front piece. You'll know if you forget this. I don't know if they call it a piston, but you know, the pedal assembly. If you don't put it in, you'll notice right away when you have no brakes at all. But you want to make sure that you put that cotter pin in real good. You want to make sure that you tighten the nut that goes on the end of it. And like I said, make sure everything's tightened down good. Another thing while you're down here, and you know, I'm assuming if you're watching this video, you're doing your own maintenance on your vehicle. You check your boots. That one's a little gone. I could probably use new boots there. Odds are my ball joints wouldn't hurt to be replaced because of that. You know, this is a type of ball joint, I guess. There. The boots are getting torn up a little bit, but they're still in place. You want to be able to make sure you've got no leaks for brakes. Calipers look in order. You probably check your boots or your pads while you're down here, shoes, whatever. And same on the other side. And then another thing I do is when I have a chance and I'm doing oil changes or whatever, use a grease gun. I found one in a junkyard for like $5 with grease still in it. But these little holes here for greasing up, I'm sure if you've read your Idiot's Guide or your Bentleys, it probably tells you when to grease them. And then you also want to make sure, you know, you don't have any horrible corrosion that's affecting anything. Nothing looks pretty down here, I guess you'd say, but you know, I had the undercarriage spray factory, I guess, so it's holding up pretty good. Those are the wires that I've done for my brakes and tail lights. And make sure nothing's dripping too bad back there, you know, because a lot of you guys probably have regular drips. But and make sure that nothing's dripping out of your cylinder, master cylinder. I guess everybody's looking dry for me. Just while you're down there, just check it out. And last but not least is to reattach your pan. Keep all the road wear out of your, yeah, easier with two hands. But it keeps all the road wear out from under all your important pedal assembly components. And I think in the long run it makes a big difference. I've got the cotter pin back in. Make sure to bend it around so it doesn't come back out. Tighten that nut, and once I get this on, I'm ready to try it out. Okay, so I got my pan on. And I'm ready to crank her up. Come on, we had the lights on last night. Wow, of course. Killed my battery, huh? Alright, well, brakes are hard when you don't have, and when you crank it up and the vacuum's working good, nice and smooth. Thank you for watching. Ooh, gear. Okay. The brakes are nice and hard now. Not revving the motor up when I push it, so that means there's no leak in the vacuum system, and everybody's good to go. Woo!